So, Martin. May I call you Martin? Thanks. So, 27 years ago, you realised Plato was wrong, and now you're telling us all about it. The thing to understand is that really by the time I was about 30, I'd realised that I probably wasn't going to be able to have a family and do this work. The strange thing about it, from inside, is that there was a real drip feed of realisations, almost week by week, over a period of decades. I mean, sometimes I was distracted and concentrating on work or something like that, but really this is what I've been doing for 27 years. And although I wasn't happy about the prospect of living without a family, over a long time, it proved to be a natural and sensible approach to take to this. I mean, over all this period, I was trying to get attention. I was trying to do something with what I was doing. So initially, obviously, I did what anyone would do, and I approached publishers and agents. But the work wasn't mature enough. It wasn't well formed enough, really, for that, and it did put me off a bit. I tried to approach people who I thought would be interested in the work. So there's a place called the Byrne Institute, named after Eric Byrne, and I thought it would be very likely that they would be interested in a complete redefinition of transactional analysis, which by that time I was well on the way with. But that didn't prove to be the case. They weren't interested, at least not from me. And the implication was, well, you need to take our training to be interested in this. You can't be an outsider. I approached academia. I approached Norwich University people, and I was approaching these people out of the blue. So it's perhaps not surprising that they weren't keen on being approached in this manner. But again, by then I had fairly solid work to offer. By then I'd actually produced printed, bound editions, which had been, edited in the light of this constant drip feed of problem solving. For most of the period, I expected to find I was wrong. I didn't expect to end up in the situation where everything kind of fitted together into this map. I had no way of knowing that that's how it would turn out. Although there were successes along the way, the writing of this book was just like drawing out a complete map. The writing of the book and the publishing of the book also gave me another avenue of trying to gain interest. So I did market stalls, I did book fairs. The Bristol Festival of Ideas received, will accept entries of the type that I made, but none of these had any concrete response. And it wasn't unexpected that there might be no response. So even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, I made an approach to a national newspaper about a year ago, and said, look, this is what I'm doing, could I possibly talk to you about it? I approached 3 reporters on that basis. Again, I got no reply, which wasn't terribly surprising at the time, but a year later I developed a bit more on the website. I've developed, I've got on with the writing and got that in place, and I really feel I've now completed what I started, nearly 30 years ago. So I approached the national newspaper a second time. I approached a year later. I'm following up on the previous approach, still the same situation. I will actually come and visit you, and hopefully, if somebody's there, then I can talk to them briefly. But again, when it came to the actual day and the trip to the premises of the national newspaper, there was no possibility really of talking to anybody. So gradually my approaches have been narrowed down to the approach that I started a long time ago without really expecting it to, without necessarily expecting it to develop into anything. But the approach is narrowed down to basically an approach via the internet, which allows me to broadcast to an audience, some of whom might be interested, and some of whom certainly should be interested and certainly should pick up on this information and be able to take it forward. So, 27 years ago, you had this idea about truth. Tell me about it. Okay, so as a kid, I was not particularly happy, and school was particularly difficult for me. My parents, my mum was genuinely of a philosophical mindset, was very interested in philosophy, and did end up studying philosophy at university, which, as well as being close to my mum anyway, that was tremendously useful, because it was a like-minded person. So my attitude to philosophy as being the pursuit of truth was shared by both my parents. Even though my dad wasn't particularly academic, he completely grasped this idea that philosophy starts with the pursuit of truth. I don't believe it ends there, but I certainly have always thought it started there. By the time I was about 18, I realised I was lucky enough to be quite good at English, and I enjoyed writing. But at the age of 18, when one knows so much about knowledge but so little about oneself and the world, my view was that there was no fundamental truth, there was no absolute truth, and I fully accepted that. But I did also think that there is truth, and religion and academia and practicalities, money, etc., are not it. So it did seem to me always that there was a huge opportunity open to the person who put their finger on this truth which so far nobody had. And it was also completely clear to me all the way through that this was not a job. You don't take a job as a thinker, because that's not real. That's not, you're not going to have a real life experience if you think your job is thinking. This could never be a job. It could never be a role. I never would, even now, I would not consider going to university, studying philosophy as a degree, and then becoming some sort of philosopher. That to me has no appeal. To me, the philosophical work is an avocation. It's something you do for the love of wisdom. It's not something you do for, obviously there are huge rewards, but it's not something you do unless those rewards appeal to you enough to make you willing to make the sacrifices. And really, I do have to say that all the sacrifices were made at the beginning. All the hardship, all the hard times were in the period leading up to my 20s. So by the time I was standing in my garden, smoking a cigarette, thinking about what a huge problem this had become, you know, the issues around good, evil, truth, absolutes, the realization that there was a hugely simplified explanation, much simpler explanation, these three dimensions which interact with each other and go on and on and on and stretch, was so simple, but it was also completely right. It would completely work, and that's what then took a further 27 years to actually prove to myself. And you believe in 100 years, children really will say, but how could they not know? Yes, I really do think that, but I'm under no illusions as to how quickly that change is going to materialise. We have much more immediate problems. I think all of those problems can be summed up for me in one word, and the word is money. So I don't necessarily think that people will, I don't necessarily think that people are crying out for an answer to religion, a replacement for religion, a replacement for academic dogma. That's a nice to have. It's not an essential. An essential is food on your plate. An essential is limiting global warming, maintaining the diversity of species, which have taken millions of years to evolve, billions in some cases, and cannot be brought back. And I don't think people are ready to face up yet to the truth that actually it's money that is causing these problems, if not causing them, certainly exacerbating them. Because the situation we've got is that cooperation between people is based on money. Now, that cooperation is also based on the things that are creating global warming, world hunger. So the question is, how do you cooperate to solve those problems when money doesn't work and isn't working? And I think it's a little bit like the human race as a whole. If you compare the timeline of the human race to the timeline of an individual, then the human race as a whole, at the moment, we're really like a small child. You know, we don't acknowledge our responsibilities to the planet and to each other. We're still working out, you know, how not to scrap with our little brother. We're still working out how to not get into wars and how to trade equitably. So I think we're like a small child, and I think we're about to hit puberty. I think it's when you hit looking back on my own life, when you hit puberty, that's the point at which you realise, oh crikey, it isn't just, you know, spending your pocket money on Caramac or getting your dad to play a board game with you, which is what my life was about. It's about actually the fairy story. You meet the prince, or the prince meets the princess, and they live happily ever after. Oh crikey, that's what life's all about, really. That realisation. I think the human race is going to go through a same period of realisation, quite a slow period, in terms of global warming, refugees, limited resources, and I think we're literally just at the beginning of that. Yes, I fully grasp what it is you're saying about money. You don't know how refreshing it is to hear me say that. People are uniformly concerned with how to spend the money. What I'm convinced we need is to study the disadvantages of money as fully and completely and critically as we study its disadvantages. In fact, there is no reason to not start doing that right now, is there?